let's talk about the difference between date vwap, which we just talked about a little bit, which requires user input for choosing which date or which number of days ago you want to launch a VWAP from. Now we're going to talk about event VWAP, which requires almost no input from the user. I built this because I kind of estimated that traders were doing the same sort of thing across many charts, but they were having to do it manually, whereas I could probably do it programmatically. So event VWAP, as the name implies, is designed to automatically launch VWAPs from any number of events. You can see here up at the very top, again, the most important input that we're going to deal with is called type, and it defaults to earnings. So let's go ahead and just click OK. All right, so at a glance, what this displays is, again, 360 trading days. So notice there are going to be some dates of earnings that aren't getting VWAPs launched from them. That's because this launches for the 4 most recent earnings dates. So a 360-day chart is actually like a year and a half's worth of trading, roughly, right? What this will do, though, is automatically grab the earnings dates down here at the bottom and launch VWAPs on those critical days for you. Now, the beautiful thing about this is what most people would probably think to do when they think of major events. They'd want to know, how has a stock reacted since earnings? Is the stock making progress since they reported earnings, or are people more and more skeptical of this stock? You can actually see here over the last 3 or 4 earnings reports, nice support occurring at that volume weighted average price. Not quite as much support in here, but still a nice breakout. Another attempt at support that really ended up failing. And as we got below what was support previously, and then breaks, that becomes resistance. And look at what kind of resistance. We're actually, here, let me use 2 different colors for this. Look at the support, effective support, and then effective resistance overhead. We're kind of caught again between macro support and macro resistance. We're funneling between those 2 otherwise hidden areas that we wouldn't know about unless we launched VWAPs from these critical events, for lack of a better word. You're going to hear me use that phrase a lot, events, right? So by default, the event VWAP study is most useful for a much longer term chart than most people are looking at. Something like 90 days or 180 days, 360 days, is kind of long-term bordering on investment type territory. But even as short-term swing traders, it can be very helpful to figure out where are these major levels for a stock. Highest and lowest. I think you guys may know this one because we literally just spent a while talking about it. I've included the highest high and lowest low VWAP options in here because they are major events and they don't require any input from the user. So if you're just trying to launch a highest and lowest VWAP, very simple. So notice what I did here is I just launched from 360 days ago, the lowest low VWAP. And I also automatically launched the highest high VWAP as well. Look at this. Support right down around that deviation band. Look at all the times. I'll just draw little arrows to them for the meantime or something, right? Look at all the different little pops off of this VWAP. Right? Multiple times where we pop right at that VWAP. And then look at as we come back down off of a strong uptrend, being outside of the 2 deviation band, we fall back towards the rising 1 deviation band and can't even offer any support there. Breaking down below that, where would our next target be? Like, what if this were an intraday VWAP chart? Where would our target be? Right to the VWAP, and look at how that stops right at the volume weighted average price off of the low nearly 2 years ago. So by default, again, this will only plot the highest high and lowest low settings available. Let's come back to yesterday and swing. They're a little more confusing. Gap is very straightforward. What gap is going to do is it takes the user-defined gap threshold setting, which is a percentage amount beyond which a gap must occur in order to qualify. So if you're the type of trader who's looking for, let's say, large gap events, and you consider those to be meaningful technical events for the stock, what we would do is we would set our threshold at 3%. Again, I'm just guessing here, right? And what this is going to do is it's going to go find automatically the 4 most recent gap events that qualify according to that threshold. And then it will launch VWAPs from those areas. Yeah, it looks like we don't have any 3% gaps on McDonald's. So let's do this. Let's go to another stock, Tesla. Oh, we might need daily gaps. I think that might be it. Yeah, that's what it was. It was looking for daily charts to perform daily gap analysis. Okay, I was like, what's going on here? So notice we didn't identify anything about where those gap event days would occur. You can see there's the dashed line. That's our most recent VWAP event. Here's the next one. And then going back here. And finally back to here. So it automatically is identifying where those gap events occurred and then launching recent VWAPs for us. And then finally, shouldn't say finally, but near finally, OPEX, which stands for options expiry. So for any of you options traders out there, you know what I'm referring to. For people who are not familiar, options expire on the 3rd trading Friday of every calendar month. What that means is there is a date at which all the contracts expire worthless or need to be cashed in. So it's kind of a finish line for that effective race. If we change this to OPEX, what we will see, unsurprisingly, is the 4 most recent options expiry dates, VWAPs, automatically launched. And a way of checking that, just to make sure we're doing the right thing here, I'm going to go in and check Show Expiration Friday. So what we're going to observe here is that these red vertical lines, which show us the options expiry dates, are the 4 most recent launch points for these VWAPs. Okay, now to the 2 more confusing options within Event VWAP. So the 2 middle options here, yesterday and swing, were 2 kind of experimental versions that I was working on. Yesterday, as the name implies, is going to plot yesterday's VWAP, but it's also going to plot yesterday's VWAP for every prior day. So it's kind of going to show you what the prior day's VWAP would look like on top of the current day's VWAP. So let's set it to yesterday, and this is going to look hideous at first, so prepare yourselves. Yep, there we go. Plenty of weird, stringy blue and white lines. Now, the reason we did it this way, not to get too detailed in the coding, but we basically had 2 different tracks that were running at any time, VWAP A or VWAP B. Whenever VWAP A was plotting today's VWAP, VWAP B would be plotting the prior day's VWAP. And then it would take over and kind of vice versa or switch around for the following day. So that's why we see only 2 colors of VWAP, blue and white. And while this seems insane at first, when we load our normal intraday VWAP, what we can actually see here is that it's constantly going to be displaying a continuation of the prior day's VWAP, whether in blue or in white. And I know the colorization thing can get a little wonky. So again, I think there are options to change that within the settings. But do you see how this shows you what any individual day would have experienced relative to both its intraday VWAP and the yesterday's VWAP? So think of this as a really verbose mode way of displaying yesterday's VWAP. It's going to display all of the yesterday's VWAPs possible. And I haven't found this to be any more helpful than using a normal 1 day ago VWAP. Personally, I think it's just a nifty thing if you're going to do some retroactive analysis of, hey, were there any times that a market really responded to or respected its prior day's VWAP? I would draw your attention to this, for example, where we clearly are rising above our intraday VWAP and finding tons of resistance, making a nice kind of flag to break up and out of. And now, the craziest of the entire bunch, the swing VWAP setting. This is something I worked on with another programmer to try to automatically update or better fit VWAPs to recent short-term swings. So basically, if I understood that VWAP was going to be too slow as it gets bigger and bigger over time, right? We've had a 20-day and 90-day VWAP. These things get slower and slower. What we really need is an automatic method for updating or trailing the creation of new VWAPs. So what we built here was an option called back range and forward range. Back range is the number of bars retroactively for which we must be making a new high or new low. I shouldn't have said retroactively. It looks backward to determine if this is the highest high or lowest low of, in this case, 8 bars in order to qualify as a new VWAP launch point. Forward range looks forward 1 bar, waiting for confirmation. So an example of this, just to kind of draw this all out, would be, let's say we have, a bunch of bars headed lower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then on the bar in question, if we make a low, and then the bar immediately after it does not make a new lower low, then we would consider this to be our new launch point for a new low VWAP. So as the name implies, a swing VWAP is something that's going to adjust or update according to the swings, the short-term swings, I should really say, the short-term technical swings that we might experience in a trader's mindset rather than a full-on, 100-bar long trend. So let's actually apply this and see it for ourselves. So set it to swing, click OK. Ooh. It's a doozy to look at first, I know. But what this is basically doing is it's identified, hey, we know we can launch a VWAP from the high, we can launch a VWAP from the low. And we're only ever going to be paying attention to the most recent day. So don't worry too much about the retroactive analysis of what would have happened other than the most recent sort of day. What this is displaying is that if we launch a VWAP, I'm just picking a random starting point for the VWAP here. If we launch a VWAP and trail it up according to price, we're going to wait until it violates that VWAP by a significant amount in order to reset or restart the VWAP to better fit it to price. When there is strong separation from the VWAP, so like in this green VWAP's case, it's going to persist and maintain until we make a new higher high above that VWAP by X number of bars. When we do, it can reset and start anew, but until then, we haven't made anything higher than this, and therefore that is still the controlling VWAP. Now, if we wanted to, we could go in and adjust the event VWAP settings a little bit to give it a slightly less responsive look and feel. So rather than only waiting for the low or high of 8 bars, we said the low or high of 50 bars. And what we're going to see is a much less choppy, much smoother and less reactive VWAP that's going to follow price up more lackadaisically. It's not so aggressively trying to form fit to price at every possible turn. Swing VWAP was designed to give you broad binary signals of, are we breaking above an important VWAP? Are we breaking below an important VWAP? Or are we kind of stuck in between the two? And that's where the price colorization comes in, with either green or red when we are breaking down below an important VWAP, or gray when we're stuck between the two. And obviously I'm looking at a really longer term chart, 20 days, 5 minutes. You could probably look at this on a shorter term, maybe a 5-day chart at a 1-minute granularity. But remember, we're dealing with periodicity here, meaning the number of bars over which we're calculating the swing VWAP to be the high or low in order to start as a new VWAP. That's dependent on the size of your bars. So we just said a 50 bar high or low, but at the 5-minute granularity. So if we go to a 1-minute granularity, that's like 250 1-minute bars. Does that make sense? I just said, 50 bars at a 5-minute granularity would be roughly equivalent to 250 bars at a 1-minute granularity. This particularly, like I said, though, I just included it because I was working on it and it is fully developed, but I'm still not using it or applying it routinely. It just fit within the event VWAP kind of space.